Yeah.
let's dive right into this. We're going to talk a ton about HubSpot and storytelling, helping companies make more money. I wanted to get right off the jump. Why do you choose HubSpot over Salesforce or even something new like Adio?
So I am a recovering technologist. I ran development shops early in my career and then owned a research company and now am accidentally own a marketing firm. And
Yeah.
technology, I'm very technology agnostic. And so if you talked to me 5 years
Mm.
ago, I would have made a different recommendation than what we're making today. And it's really based
Okay.
on the type of companies we're working with and how we can consolidate some of the decision making into
Mm.
one platform. And so for the last year or so, HubSpot has made some really good waves in that category. It's easier to
Mm.
work with. We were working with a lot of companies 5 years ago that were building WordPress front ends with maybe HubSpot in
Mm.
the middle and then Salesforce. Like you had multiple systems going on. So I'm
Yeah.
not a consolidate everything into one platform kind of guy, but I do want to get down to a
Yeah.
handful of platforms.
Yeah.
And for what we're trying to accomplish, it just makes sense.
I do admit, I've said this a few times on the show, that my first exposure to HubSpot was maybe 2014,
Yeah.
and I was in a startup company, and it was just janky. It
Yeah.
was like, it just felt like low rent talent, and but they've pivoted, like they
Yeah.
somehow they snuck up on everyone, and I really feel like if outside of enterprise they're taking the lion's share. Um, help me understand just a little bit more then. What can who benefits the most, which companies for HubSpot, and then what can they do with it? Because I just heard you say like landing pages and funnels, etc.
Well, I mean, what's interesting is you can determine the pedigree of a company based on what they're named. So HubSpot used to be about landing pages and Salesforce is about
Mm,
sales. And they typically do that very well. Like whatever their pedigree was is the thing they do well. And then they bolted on some of these
that's so
other
good.
pieces around it. So
Yeah.
driving. And if we think about the companies we're working with, marketing and that marketing uh, roadmap is long, so it takes a long time for someone to make a
Yeah.
decision. So even though it is a relationship driven thing and you eventually want to talk to a salesperson, there's a long period of time that marketing is responsible for that. And then to keep
Mm,
that person in relationship, you also need to make sure you have those touch points in place. And regrettably, salespeople typically love to sell the next deal. So you need systems around them
yeah.
that are going to help support that they don't really have to spend a lot of time remembering what to do and what to do
Yeah.
next. And HubSpot takes a lot of that out of the
Well, they
equation.
also want a bunch of layups. It's like they just want
Yeah.
to show up every day and like give me some warm leads. You know what's funny that now that you're saying that, I love this show because I have been in these ecosystems since 2012, retail integration specifically. But I forget, like HubSpot, you're right. It was like the orange, it was the little, it's connecting the little
Yeah.
things where you would have put content, which is like e-signs, um, blogs back then, your website. And it was trying to like bring it together and tell you. I remember ours would like tell you who was on your website. It
Oh
would try
yeah.
to enrich that data and say like, oh, you've got an executive level from. I was in the automotive industry at that point. We were doing retail integration for Daimler. It's like you got an executive level from Ford on your site. And I was like, well, that's weird. Um,
Well, they're
why?
talking
So
talking about it as the loop now. So if you look at HubSpot language, they
yeah,
talk about the loop, and it used to be a funnel, which is more appropriate anyway. You want to bring someone in, but also keep them in the ecosystem and continue to
yes.
increase share of wallet and things like that.
I want to talk more about that. See, in a little bit later in the show, there's this popular headline like, "Oh, the funnel's dead." I'm like, no, that's just a silly way. The funnel was always a bad analogy, right? Like the funnel's just
Yes.
trying to say you start with the lot and you end with the little. But like,
Yes. And
I never,
it's a very B2C idea as well. Like a
yeah,
lot of people at the top and then bring them down. And well, if you're
right. And then they
fishing in
fall
a
out your funnel. I'm like,
pond,
well, that's not a
yeah.
good. I'd never change my oil with that funnel. Like that's a horrible funnel. Um, So maybe before we get too far, actually tell the audience what you specialize, who you like to serve, how you like to serve them, and then I don't always come at the marketing angle. So I want them to understand when you go into a business, the importance of what you're trying to tell them. Besides just like hire more sellers, it sounds like you have a different angle here when you talk to your prospects and customers.
Yeah, yeah, we never think about tactics first. So Liger
Mm,
is a merged entity. So it is a lion and a tiger, two strong things brought
mm,
together, which is how we were
yeah,
formed
yeah,
in 2018. and about
No, you be
90% of
clear about the origin story of that name. To tell the
well,
audience
and
where that name
also
came
it's
from.
named after the movie Napoleon Dynamite, because I have
All
some
right.
long-term friends that when that name came up as a potential option and we could do that, I was like, this is great because they hate that movie and they're gonna
I
every
love
time they
it.
see me, they're gonna say, "You named your company after Napoleon Dynamite." So we have a
I
lot of
also love it because you probably have raving customers and then polarized prospects
um,
instantly. Like,
well, I
like I'll
love it when I
never
get
work.
on a sales call and the person's like, "Did you name the company after?" And I'm like, "Absolutely, we did. We have a disco ball in our office. It's called the Liger
I love it.
Layer." So we like really leaned into that, and because we do primarily B2B and complex marketing type work, that is
Yeah.
people think that that has to be boring, and it doesn't. It is
Yeah.
not. You're still
Yeah.
selling to a person. So we
Yeah.
walk into B2B companies, complex B2B
Mm.
companies that are typically going through some kind of complex change. So they
Mm.
bought another company, they've been merged into another, they need to change out the brand and how it kind of goes to
Mm.
market. And we not only look at the marketing, like the business, but we also understand what are the tactics and the techniques you need to put
Mm.
on the back end. So when you talk
Mm.
about salespeople or even HubSpot or any of these choices, we're always company first. Where is the business today and where does it want to be in 2 years, regardless
Mm.
of
So
the
good.
chatter of the world? And I'm
Yeah.
an old guy. I've been around for a long
Yeah.
time. And
Yeah.
so there was the internet and there was social media. And I was at a
That's
dinner
right.
last night and everybody's talking about how new some of the stuff is. And I'm like, it's not new.
Yeah.
It's just people are all caught up in the buzzwords. So first we have to
Yeah.
understand the business. Then we understand the marketing that gets applied, and
Yeah.
then we apply the techniques and the tactics, which would be how many salespeople do you need? What is the technology you're on top of? And that's a political conversation internally. It doesn't get replaced by
Mm.
AI because some people are
Mm.
afraid of it because it's going to, get
Mm.
rid of their job. The executives don't really
Yeah.
understand it, those kind of things. So we're
Mm.
having those tough, important conversations that then make sure the stuff you're implementing on the back end is going to be successful, that the
Yeah.
BDM you're doing is
So
going to work. Yeah.
and what revenue range did you like? I think you heard.
Yeah, so we typically will. So we work typically in companies that are 10 to 100 million.
Yeah.
They will often become much larger than that. Like we've got one company that's
For
the
sure.
fourth largest wholesale brokerage in the United States, but it's based on merging a bunch of 10 to $100 million
Yeah.
companies together. But we love that in a challenger brand. We love challenger brands, like a brand that other people don't know, that doesn't have the same money that somebody else does, and they've got to
That's
figure out
great.
how to do some guerrilla work to make it happen.
Yeah, so there you go. You said it, guerrilla work. The word that always comes to mind for me is scrappy, and so
Yeah.
there's so much to unpack, and I'll see if we can get through some of these. But like, first off, you don't look a day over 28, so congrats. I appreciate. I'm taking notes. I'm 43. I don't mind candidly saying it, and I also have been in technology since 2000. I joined the military in 2000, and I was a traditional IT. So when I joined the Coast Guard, they still had green screens, and then
Yeah.
I
Oh
did
yeah.
full stack technology. And somebody came to me the other day, even about AI, and I'm like, look, dog, there's a thing called an OSI model, OSI model. And it's the different layers of communication. It's not super relevant to RevOps, but it is relevant to all these new shiny things. This isn't new, like cloud was an icon that AT&T put on its telephony graphics because it's just implying that like there's a bunch of stuff here in the middle that we know is data farms and data
Yeah.
servers and wires, but like we're not going to put the whole thing on the schematic. So here's the other end of it, and you're worried about this and that. But my point is, a lot of these origin stories are not new, and even in my world in RevOps, I'm trapped in this echo chamber that's like it's so annoying at this point. Like, well, RevOps is this and not that, and I'm like, man, go to market. I wish they called it go to market, what you and I did. Growing a business has not
Yeah.
changed. Like the idea of needing to get attention, the idea of needing to convert that attention into some form of quoting, like making a real offer. This is business 101 now. Offer, accept the terms, handshake, then getting that to order, fulfilled order, then fulfilling the service, and then putting it in your bank account. That's been around since the Japanese were like selling rice worldwide. Like
Right.
these aren't new
Yep.
systems. So I'm so happy that you went into that. I was talking with an Israeli company the other day that will probably onboard me as a contractor, and he sent me like a written exam, which I thought was great. And he's like, "What do you care most about these things?"
Yeah.
And I was like, well, "Hang on, let's go deep. How do you guys make money? How much do you want to make next year? What does the actual sales cycle look like? How are you generating leads? Do you want more leads, less leads?" Those are the questions that I feel like today. And maybe here, let's start with this. your experience on this. Today, I feel like people are skipping those questions. Is that new, or have people been like skipping these questions for decades now?
And endlessly. So I use a term called BATCOM, which I really wish was a Liger term, but it's not. BATCOM. And so it's
Uh-huh.
branding. You have to have branding, awareness, traffic, conversion,
Yes. Yeah.
optimization, and measurement. Those are the six main things. Everyone
That's
in
so
the
good.
world wants conversion. I want conversion. I don't want to have
Right.
to do any of the other things. But if I'm not driving any traffic to the places that I can create that
Yeah.
conversion, regardless of it being in person, online, whatever, if no one knows who I am, I haven't built the right awareness model. And that's where AI made
Yeah.
a big impact. And you don't know who my
Yeah.
brand is, or you keep changing it. Like that drives me crazy. Like small companies
Yeah.
should not make a branding mistake because they can't afford to do it. Large companies never do. Like they're white. The white they're using is the same white over and over again. And we'll talk to smaller companies who are just bored with their brand or really haven't thought about it, and they've got to build that North Star. So you can't skip a step. Like I would love to go, run a marathon. Not really, but I'd love to go
Yeah.
run a marathon.
Yeah. I'm
And if I
working
go
on
out
one. It's
go at
challenging.
it today. Yeah, if I'm running from a bear, so you should probably run too. That's
Yes.
not my thing.
Yes.
So swimming and
Yeah.
things, I like that. But you can't skip a step. And so when you talk
Yeah.
like RevOps or you talk this, or you talk that, you haven't even started at the right place. Like what is the brand?
Yeah.
Where is the business headed? Then we can get you
Yeah.
to conversion. And then once you get to conversion, that's where I do think RevOps is really important, because that's that optimization and measurement. Like, are we doing it the most efficiently? Because so I could go on and on about this.
Can you
There's so many
talk to?
people like,
Well, I do want to go on about that. Let's talk to. Who do you normally talk to at the company? Are you talking to a founder, a CMO? Like who's normally your champion?
so what's interesting is the companies we work with so undervalue marketing. They don't even have someone sitting in the C-suite that
Right.
has a CMO title, or they won't have anybody on the board. So we typically go in for this poor person who's sitting inside the company, who's responsible for marketing, who may not be classically marketing trained. So
For sure.
they're
Yeah,
the vet.
they put this in my written quiz. Sorry to cut you off, but they were like, also we're getting our open rates on our emails are horrible. Our hard bounce rate is too high, and I was like, dang, like you guys need a marketer. Like
Yeah,
I'll do a
right.
lot of things in your HubSpot, but like I can't do copy. Like
Yeah.
anyway,
Well, and people think
what
marketing is like one thing. Like I talk about marketing has a
right?
marketing problem, and it's 25 to 30 different skill sets, like 25 to 30 different skill sets. So AI
Yeah.
has helped make some of them simpler, but you still have to have someone who knows if it's good or not. Like just because you
Well,
can
all
do
right,
it.
we are going to talk a lot about AI, but here's when this is top of mind for me today because the quiz, quote unquote quiz or problem statement that this client sent me today, it fit on one screen of an email on my iPhone. So I took a screenshot, I put in the chat. I'm always curious about AI's take on it. And because, I understand what the correct answer is going to be, but if you can save me 30 minutes drafting an email, let's go there.
Right.
And I just sent the screenshot and I said, what would an experienced RevOps person care about the most out of these pain points? Its answer was atrocious. It was like, it was the most buzzword. You need to lock down governance and governance this and governance. I was like, where did that come from? And if that's your RevOps guy, please fire him or her. Like where did we ask about the business and the 43,000 the 20,000 contacts this person mentioned that had no owner? Like let's start there, or our opportunities. Anyway, my statement on that is that like AI, it's not it's super useful if you know what you're trying to do.
Yes.
It'd be like saying YouTube will help you change your oil better. It can
Right.
if you know what you're looking for. My question for you is talking to let's say, so you're talking to either the founder, the champion of 10 million to 100 million, or this poor sap that's stuck like making bad copy and just hopefully testing it in whatever outreach system. I want you to unpack the acronym for me, if you don't mind, like dumbify it for a sales ops guy. You started with branding, and I thought that was interesting because later there was attention. But like, what happens if you get attention and you don't have branding? Why is branding so important
Well, I think
first? Like
it's
other
really,
coaches would tell you to just go to market.
oh, yeah, right. I mean, that's based on the dollars they have. So that sounds like a very kind of, and
That's true.
I'm going to say this, and I'm an East Coast guy. I've
Yeah.
grown up in Atlanta my entire life, and we believe in building good companies that generate revenue. And on the West Coast, there's often the opportunity to spend a lot of money, right? So if you spend a lot of
That's
money,
so good.
You can make
No,
some
you could trash.
mistakes.
You're talking about the Bay Area too. Let's be real clear. We're
Yeah, I
talking about
mean,
Silicon Valley. Yeah.
every job I've ever had, I've been required to actually use the money very efficiently and effectively.
Okay.
And so if you can buy market, which is what you're talking about, then
Yeah.
good for you. Go do that, right? Like have a stunt, whatever. But to
Yeah.
build a sustainable business that's going to grow revenue up and to the right in a consistent way and have the right kind of multiples, you need to start off with who the heck are you? Clarity
Okay.
around the brand, clarity about who you're for, voice and tone, identity, all those kind of things, because everything else trickles down from it. And it
Mm.
provides guidance not only to the humans, but also to the robots. And it's incredibly important in AI world. Like that's where a bunch of companies are making
Mm.
mistakes is they're saying different things in different places. So AI doesn't know where to place you, right? And you need to be
Yeah.
differentiated. So don't use AI to do it because AI is going to tell you to be the same as all your
Yeah.
competitors. That's a problem. So brand
So
is more than
let
just
me.
a logo. It's like that whole thing around who are you when you walk in a room.
Yeah. So I wanted. So I stepped on. You were starting to answer, and I stepped on it. I just wanted to. I think what I'm seeing is, and you could tell me I'm thinking too small on this. Some people will spend hours in Canva, for example, and if you say, "What are you doing?" They say, "I'm working on a brand template or something," and then that business coach will say, "That's crazy. Just
Oh
go
yeah.
start sending emails
Well,
and try to get." Okay,
yeah.
so what? Why would you tell someone no? Unpack that. Reverse that.
Well, so I think if you think, so I'm a serial entrepreneur parallel because I've had multiple businesses going on at the
Yeah.
same time. And so if I'm out just trying to sell a thing, so that's a sub $10 million or maybe pre-revenue company.
Okay.
I do agree with that. Go out
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
sell. Like if you can't
Super
sell
fair.
anybody, what are you doing? It's a hobby. It's a
Yeah.
bad
You don't even know if you're an
idea.
entrepreneur yet. Yeah.
Right. So when we get into a
Yeah.
company that's in that 10 to 100, or they've called us and said things are messy, like they've got to, I said they're profitable but not progressing. They're
Okay.
profitable but not progressing. So you've got to,
Okay.
like, you've kind of proven it. Like, you know that you do a thing, you know who it's for, you're making money, like, you're not really struggling that way. Now it's time to really define who you are, to define, because
Mm.
that's the only way you can replicate it to other marketers, salespeople, to show up in front of the right buyer, who wants to potentially
Yeah.
purchase your business at some point.
Yeah.
So you could skip it early when it's like grunt, you got the founder out doing all the sales and you're just
Mm.
trying to figure out where your market fit is and those kind of things. But at some point, you got to grow up, right? You got to
Okay.
mature. And so these awkward in between
Okay.
companies, which is part of why I also like Liger, because Napoleon was very awkward and in between. How do we mature you so that you make sense? And if your brand doesn't look like the companies you're going after, if there's not a parity between
Oh,
them,
that one's so good.
then they're not going to buy from you because they're like, why would we work with you? Like that doesn't make sense.
That's
It's
so
going to
good.
discount you.
I think people misunderstand that. They want to. Um, I like to use real world examples, but sometimes I feel bad like trashing it. But there's a $24 million consulting firm that I know. They consult in the RevOps space, and they had a tremendous warm network from their prior consulting experience. So they were getting big accounts, big AI accounts, big West Coast Silicon Valley accounts. But then they created this annual event, and the branding around the annual event, I was like, that it's so tacky and so like the opposite of what people would expect from like even a Salesforce or HubSpot event. I was like, I just don't know. I'm not a marketer, and you guys are making 24 million, and I'm not. So maybe you're doing it right, and I'm not. But like, I just didn't see the market fit there, and I didn't know how to articulate it. And I think that's more correct. The people that I see that I'm serving, they go to events in Las Vegas like Kaseya Connect, MSP Nation, and people can say that's boring corporate stuff, but it fits them. They want to be there.
Yeah.
So super good. But keep me on the dumb guy you're educating on the acronym. So it was branding and what else? Now awareness in BATCOM?
Yeah. So brand and then awareness. And awareness includes, what are you, we talk about different kinds of content. So there's paid, earned, shared, and owned. And so
Yeah.
are you leaning into those in the right way and with the right cadence? Because if you have a great brand but nobody knows you exist, like what are the places you should
Mm,
show up? And those could include what conferences should you be attending? How are you getting your thought leadership
mm,
out there? Are you do you need reviews? Like are you doing all just like the good things to make sure that once
mm,
that brand is there, I now have built a driveway to bringing people to the property or the location I want them to go to
mm.
next. such that they're, lining up and I have the opportunity to have
Okay,
a
I'm going to give
conversation.
you sometimes I hate these questions in my discipline, but I'm going to give it to you anyway because I'm willing to let you like swat that away. If someone said, what would you do in the first 90 days? Like you're going to take us on, or even 30 days is probably more practical. You just listed the different types of media. Some of them I know are super valuable, but they take a long time to get, like
Yeah.
maybe owned media or like true PR. And I bias toward paid because like you could turn it on right away and it works or doesn't work. Where do you go? What's highest impact, lowest effort?
So you can turn on paid, and we've had clients try
Mm.
to do that too early, and then they have because talking about HubSpot and the marketing ecosystem, like we were working with a client and they wanted to turn on paid. It took 7 seconds for their homepage to load.
Oh, that's horrible.
seven
Okay, I see where you're going with that.
seconds
Yeah,
for
yeah.
their homepage to load. So I'm like, we can
Right.
do it. It sounds like a terrible idea. Like, who's going, like, we're just going to waste
Okay.
a bunch of money, right? So again, there's an order to this, and we're not telling people, oh, it's going to take us 6 months to get there. We're typically 60 to 90 days. We've been through this is
Yeah.
if the way we look at it is if it were our company and our money, how would we spend it and in what order?
That's
And that's
good.
how I work with my financial advisor, the guy who fixes my car.
Yeah.
Like, what are the things I need to do? That's how we're working with our clients. Like, what is your
Yeah.
business? Where's the business headed? If this is where you want to be in 2 years, and we're typically we do what's called a roar
Mm.
map, which is a SOAR.
Okay.
Like, where are you today? Where do you want to be in 2 years? And
Mm-hmm.
what are the KPIs that are going to fit? What do we need
Mm.
to do in that order? And that's going to drive tactics and choices and all that.
Mm.
Be very wary of the marketing agency that sells you the thing they do well. So if they're a
For
PR firm,
sure.
they're going to sell
That's
you
a great point.
PR. And that's why we call ourselves a marketing firm. We're not an agency.
Yeah.
An agency is going to sell
What is
you.
the what's the long tail gold 5 years later where you're like, dang, I'm so happy we invested in that? Like what really drives a company for a long time on that awareness side?
Oh, well, I mean, it is. I know you said that, owned can take a long time, but owned is the thing that I have the most control
Yeah.
over. So we care a lot about that. It's PESO, so paid, earned, shared, and owned, but we typically start owned, shared, earned, paid. Like that's
Yeah.
the order
No,
we
for
go
sure.
in. And so
Yeah.
knowing that you're driving traffic to specific pieces of content that then bring people to the next
Mm.
letter, which is traffic. Like, is it something that makes people interested? And we talked at the beginning about the funnel. Well, I believe it's like people are
Mm.
either in the waiting room or they're ready to buy. Like that's where they
That's
are.
good.
So
Yeah,
have we
pre-purchase or in need. Yeah,
ready
that's
to
good.
go, right? And so have I
Yeah.
done a good job of getting someone to the point of ready to purchase when they get on the phone with a salesperson? In B2B, 82% of the process happens before they talk to a salesperson.
For
82%.
sure.
And so then you get on the phone with the salesperson, all the salesperson really is
Yeah.
doing is either closing the deal or screwing it up because I've done all the right
Yeah.
things. And so
And oftentimes screwing it up.
so if you
I
see,
think
you're saying that 5 years, it's also about goal. Like clients, sometimes they want to buy other companies. They want to be seeing, like, what do you want? What does 5 years look like for you? Is it a higher multiple? Is it
yeah.
increased
I
share of
guess
wallet?
I pay a lot of attention to it now because I found that because I have a tech background, I'm good at the quick stuff. But then when I started pivoting into my own brand, I was like, oh, but wait a second. As you create the owned stuff, you have things to talk about in the paid stuff.
Oh,
And
yeah.
like and there's a concept even in the paid world of a landing page that you just whip together for a very specific purpose of
Yeah.
conversions, but also like press releases, articles, all that stuff is landing pages. So I still value. We're going to get to the revenue down the line, but like I value that, but I almost am trying to spend more time on building this behemoth base of like just
Oh,
owning.
yeah.
I personally, I want to
Oh,
own this RevOps keyword. I
well,
don't
you're
think anyone
doing,
owns it yet, and I'm going
yeah,
to do it.
you're doing what you're doing with the podcast is one of the things that we will recommend to a client early. The longer
Yeah,
form
it's so
content
good.
that then can be turned into written,
100%.
clips, all that kind of stuff. That is amazing. That's manna
I've been
for
astounded
marketing.
that I've had to twist people's arms, and again, this isn't like a plug for the podcast, but even if it never gets 50,000 views, it's got indexing, it's got your
Oh
name
yeah.
and your company deeply, deeply embedded as a deep link. It's got your links in it. It's got beautiful photos and images of you. It's got credibility. It's
Oh
it's
yeah.
almost like it's the next best thing to writing a book without having written a book, because writing a book is very hard, you know?
Well, and if you do your podcast correctly, it'll turn into your book. So I wrote a book in
That's a great point.
2013, and we used a lot of the content that I had collected
Oh,
along
that's
the
so good. You
way
just helped me
to
out. You
help
just saved me
put that
years. Thank you
together.
so much. Yeah, I was using Daniel Priestley's. He's got a little software to help you write a book. I started to write it, and I was just like, man, this is going all over the place. It feels forced. So that's a good point. Like I already have 40 of these in the bank. That's 40 hours of
It's 40
content on a
hours.
niche.
I think it's an hour of content is like there's some stat around it, but you're looking like 50 to 60,000 words. So once you have around
Yeah,
50 podcasts, you should have enough content out of those to identify
that's so
patterns
good.
and then build out like a 10
Amazing.
chapter book.
Okay, so now something confusing me in my non-marketer mind is you're distinguishing between awareness and traffic. So how do you
Yeah.
look at those two things differently?
Well, I could be aware, but never click on a thing, right? And it
Okay.
takes 21 times for you to build awareness in the brain.
Okay.
And those are those little slight things. Like I was talking to somebody the other day and I
Mm,
was talking to her about social media. And she's like, yeah, every week I put up social media posts and I'm always changing out the color palette because I want to make it interesting. And I'm like, what you're doing is you're making the brain doesn't
so
recognize that
good.
it's the same pattern, right? If you,
Yeah.
that's that story about white. Like white is when a ad starts on television and it has a white screen, you know if it's Publix or Williams Sonoma or Old Navy or Target or Apple because the white they choose is
Oh,
slightly different. Your brain
so good.
already is waiting for that brand. And so awareness
That's
is
good.
about I always hear the same thing, I see the same thing, I have an expectation before I see a logo or brand identity of any type that this is this company. Now you've done something compelling that makes me drive to traffic because traffic is then I come to your store, I go to your landing page, I go to your website, I do the next thing you want me to
Yeah.
do, right? And
Yeah.
people who think on this end are like, we're going to do some kind of crazy thing and get them to, and then
Yeah.
they're going to get there and they're not going to be qualified and it's just going to be a waste and
This
whatever.
stuff this stuff always makes my brain turn so much. So, for example, I know what good looks like when I see it. You know, all the color combination, and I'll even criticize. Right now, I've got this on the background just because I haven't made a better one yet. You can't see the purple on the blue, and you can't, and like the font isn't popping off. So I know it doesn't look good, but it's the best that I could do in Canva. My thumbnail guy, I hired this out because he's artistically inclined, does a good job of like color combinations and marketing. I always struggle on the creative side because everything from like the font on your website to the colors you're choosing, like there's so many levels to just what makes it look good, and it's strange to me. I can never get my finger on that, so it's very hard to distinguish. And you're right, when you look at an Apple box, it's white, but it's not exactly hashtag FFF,
Right.
HTML white. It's not just white.
It
Super
has its
interesting.
own thing. And I mean, I'm a big, Malcolm Gladwell, and I've talked a lot about this
Oh,
as
I
it
love
relates to
Malcolm Gladwell.
AI, but it's true for brand as well. He talks about that the human mind, even when it sees like you see a fake statue, you know it, even though you're not trained in
Mm,
that. So you have to trust your
mm.
instinct. People lean either qualitative, so they're
A fake
qualitative.
statue, like a fake statue, like what?
Yeah, so in the first chapter of Blink, he talks about going into a museum, and there was a statue that had been created, and people all they've like that looks fake, even if you've not gone to
Ah,
art school or whatever, because you can tell
oh,
as a. So that's the same thing with brand. Like when something's just a little off, you're like, this is just a little off, and a little off if you've done it on purpose. Think Dollar Shave Club, and
that's
you're like,
fair.
that's kind of
Yeah, yeah,
awkward. It makes you pay attention.
yeah,
But if your brand is meant to be perfect and whatever, and then things are a
yeah.
little bit off, the face like that just doesn't
No,
match,
I
right?
know. So a good example is I know from my thumbnail experience that what's behind me right now, it's too off. It'll never be a thumbnail, but you never get that back. Like it's instantly in like cheap bucket or you didn't even try. Um, yeah, now Dollar Shave Club was it like I don't want to unpack all the marketing case studies, but they were intentional. They were off, but
Oh,
it was like the color combination
on
made sense and it
purpose.
was hysterical and it worked.
Well,
Okay,
so
so but go ahead. Go
marketing.
ahead.
I'll make one last statement. Marketing has to be visceral. It has to be visceral. I
Okay.
either have to hate it, love it, it has to offend me. It has to make me laugh. There has to be something that makes it stand out. Because, and specifically in today where you have so many messages, so many whatever. So you got to lean into whatever that
Yeah.
visceral response is that you're looking for.
It's like jewelry stores. It's like it's all the same cursive script. There'll be a blistering, shimmering diamond there,
Yeah.
some attractive stock photo model. You don't remember any of their names.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Okay, so but the question was that you started to answer the difference between awareness is so their perception of you, but then traffic. What I think I heard you say was like traffic was now you're intentionally getting them to go to a specific place. Is that what you were distinguishing?
Yes. And the good old
Okay,
days before we had online, traffic meant you got people to the store. Like they walked in the door, right? So there was enough
that's so
advertising that
good. That's such a
happened.
good way to think of that too. It's
Yeah,
like
well, and everything came from that. You talked about, the rice and all this stuff
yeah,
started, back. Basically, marketing is propaganda that was established
yeah,
back in the 40s as it related to the war, and then it was applied into the business space. And so we wanted at that point to get someone to get in their car and go to a store and take an action. That's traffic. So that's the same thing
yeah,
as like, what's going to make me click on that ad, go to do whatever it is you want me to attend that conference. There's your
yeah,
traffic. Now you can get a ton
yeah,
of traffic and you don't get the next, which is conversion. So do I go from traffic to conversion? Does someone actually then do the
yeah,
thing I want them to do? Sign up,
yeah.
buy, whatever those pieces are. And those four steps, and we also talk about like making sure you've got your culture right. And there's other stuff inside that. But if you just simply
Mm,
think about, do I know who you do I understand your brand? Have I seen it?
mm,
Does it compel me to take an action? That's the
yeah,
traffic component. And then when I get there, if your landing page doesn't convert me, then what good was the land?
that's
Like
right.
that's the only purpose of the landing page.
Yeah, that one I hope is straightforward to the owners. Like, did they do the action that you were trying to get them to do? Um, was there more? So BATCON is con conversion altogether.
It's so so it's BATCOM, COM. So the next one
Com.
is optimization. So I could be converting
Okay.
people, but the conversion is like really expensive, right? It's maybe
Yeah. Yeah.
too
Yeah.
expensive to actually be running the campaign the way I'm doing it,
Yeah.
or I'm going to a bunch of trade
Right.
shows and I get people to come to the trade show and scan their badge, but this is a really bad use of my money.
That's
So
right.
we want to optimize that. And then you can't
Right.
stop there, this is where RevOps is kind of like the qualitative side is one, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
the quantitative is the other measurement. So is that continuing to work the way that I expect? I need to pay
Okay.
attention to it. And that's where we've seen a big impact in the last couple of years around AI of, people's, zero click searches and, seeing traffic drop off and things like that. So if they just like left
Yeah.
it, or they were relying very, very heavily on one type of kind of traffic conversion optimization
Mm,
model, they now have to rethink it and go back and start to potentially go to the front. They're probably not going to go back to branding, but there's probably some type of an
mm.
awareness issue that is impacting the ability to get people to the end.
What? So I almost feel like you can walk through a whole business with that. Is there something? Is there somewhere else you start the companies or founders? Is there more that you think is important to unpack, or is this kind of a lens where you say, "Hey, step through these things, and you can start finding bottlenecks or misses"?
Yeah, when we start with a company, we start with typical services. We start off with a strategy session, right? Or
Mm,
discovery, and we're looking at macro and micro trends that are impacting the business. Those also become great opportunities for earned media because if you have an opposing point of view or some way that you can
mm,
capture one of those, you can live in that. You
mm.
look at your competitors, who's your ideal customer, where do you want to be, and then we do some brand shopping, and that starts to take us into that kind of category. Something that is an underlying component of this that is missed is the internal component of it. So culture. So does your culture actually
Yeah.
reflect what you're doing and the other sides of this? And that's, do you have good
Mm.
mission, vision, and values? Do people understand it and believe in it? Are they being
Can you
authentic?
think of an example of where that didn't work? You don't have to put the name on blast, but like, what did that look like where branding didn't match culture?
Well, I mean, you see it all the time. So you'll see somebody. I
Okay.
mean, my favorite example is the fact that, I'm from the South and we're Chick-fil-A's headquarters. And, when
Yeah.
somebody at Chick-fil-A says my pleasure, you're like, I believe you, right? Like I
Yeah.
believe you mean it.
Yeah.
And then you might go to another fast food restaurant that sells burgers and they may say the same
Uh,
thing and they say my pleasure.
all
And
right.
for a fact, they don't really mean that. So,
That's so
and
funny.
Yeah, and if you get
I'm
into
from
the
New Orleans. Yeah, we're in the South. You and I are on the same around the same latitude. Um, yeah, it's so funny because you can go through Popeye's chicken too, and
yeah,
what they're saying they mean it for good or for bad.
for good or bad, that's right. And then
Yeah,
even
move the
the
line.
yeah, even the experience. I mean, that's what
Take
I
your
am.
biscuits.
Yeah, very qualitative oriented. So when you're walking into I still love physical spaces because the physical space is a
Hmm.
manifestation of the brand, and
Hmm.
that's also what's so
Yeah, we'll
important
talk
about.
about Chick-fil-A somewhat on that because
Oh
I
yeah,
now that I've heard what you've said, I could see where Chick-fil-A is like checking almost every box from color to experience to what's inside to how you get treated inside. Like
consistency, speed,
yeah,
all that stuff. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean,
So
Chick-fil-A is the place that
what does
you'll
that look
go.
like?
It'll be completely packed, and you've got only a
Hmm.
few minutes to get lunch, and you still would go to Chick-fil-A. You would never do that at
It's
other
so
restaurants
wild.
because you're like,
Yeah,
I'm too busy. I would never get through. But you know, you're gonna get through
yeah,
the Chick-fil-A. So it's the
yeah,
brand promise that's been made very early before you even like how you're experiencing the brand. And then if that gets broken along the way, and that's what happens with like your
yeah,
favorite restaurant, the place you go hang out, and then all of a sudden there's a management
yeah.
change, and there was a management change before anyone
Mm,
tells you. You just walk in, you're like,
yeah.
this isn't the place it was last time I was here, right?
I was trying to Cane's is another local
Yeah. Hmm.
restaurant out this way, and their story's so good. But then like, Chick-fil-A is maybe not a fair standard for everyone, but I remember going through the drive-through once, and the young teenager was like staring at me blankly because I wasn't getting the product name correct, and I'm like, I don't work here. Like help me. I just want three of those things and like take my
Whatever they
money.
are.
But
Yeah.
it was such a weird experience where I'm like, she was doing the Gen Z stare. I don't know if you've ever caught
Yeah.
one of those
Yeah.
before. I'm like, are you okay? But she
Well,
just couldn't compute that I called the number three the wrong thing, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't sit in your point of sale every day.
yeah.
It's like
Well,
help me, help me help you.
had a similar experience. I was long term like Starbucks fan, and so I know how to like order
Yeah.
Starbucks like off the way they want it ordered. And I went through a competitor's line, and I accidentally used some Starbucks language, and they're like, "We don't know what you're saying." I'm like, "I'm pretty sure you do know what I'm saying."
Yeah,
Like,
you just don't like it at Starbucks. All right. Well, because we named it, and because we're in big enough brands that probably won't care. Starbucks, in my opinion, and I don't mean to drag it politically at all, but like they had a brand in the beginning, and it worked really well, and I liked going to them because of what they represented. And I'm talking way back, early
yeah.
2000s. Jim Cramer was on CNBC
Oh
talking
yeah.
about it.
I built a
It was a
company in a
nice place to have coffee.
Starbucks. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
Okay. Right.
an
So now
official third place, and it's no longer an official third place. So yes.
100%. It's become. I think they want to be. There's a Colorado brand. I can't. Dutch Brothers. I think they want to be like a little rectangle drive-through. So, what would you say if you could give a word of caution to founders? And again, I don't represent Starbucks, and I'm not trying to speak to these logos, but like, what happened to them? What did they do? And how would you tell another brand like, don't do that? Like, what's the takeaway
Well,
with
I
that?
think they did a lot of things wrong, honestly, because
Yeah. I mean,
I'm a
fair.
yeah Starbucks fanboy forever, and
Yeah.
but I mean, I think the original mistake. This is going to sound crazy. Everybody's going to think I'm crazy. Is when they moved over and started serving so many food items. I mean,
Okay.
no, like you want food, right?
No, that's
But,
fair.
but you would walk into a Starbucks and it had that smell, the smell of coffee. Like you
Of
could walk
coffee.
out and
Yes.
you'd
Because you
smell
went there
like
for coffee.
coffee,
Yeah.
right? And you could
Yeah.
hang out and you could get work done and whatever. And then they started
Also,
introducing,
and sorry to cut you off, but like I had offices in Sydney, Tokyo, Dublin, and Denver. If I went to the Starbucks in Dublin and I asked for drip coffee, there is what I had to call it. It tasted good. It was the same coffee. I
yeah,
just knew worldwide I could get coffee at Starbucks. Now,
yes.
not no mo. It's
Right. And when you walk in now to a Starbucks, and I know they talked about when they first put the food in that they had bought these special ovens that would prevent the smell. They mostly smell like food now. When you walk in, they
yeah.
smell like the pastry
That's a
items and
great point.
things.
Okay, so the
So,
smell of the brand even changed.
oh, smell is well, yeah. I love to cook,
Yeah.
and there's
Yeah.
so much about that. Walking into a space and it having this kind of. So there was that. The way they handled some of the openings and closings during the pandemic was a big deal. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of brand promises that I feel that Starbucks made that they then decided
Yes.
either to abandon, and then they continue to charge more. It's like, well, you can't do both. You can't
That's right.
abandon these things and then also not give me a Ritz Carlton experience. I mean, I
Yeah,
used to
here's
go.
another contrast. In 2014, I used to stop. every day on my way. My office was only 3 miles away. I would still stop at this Starbucks because there would be smiling young girls in there, or young, attendants, whatever you want to call them. They were so sweet. Hey, Chad, they'd have your order ready. Now they enjoyed working there. There was a culture of
Yeah.
like, this is a good employer. College students enjoyed it. Now, because of how efficient Starbucks has tried to get, if you pay attention to these employees, they're miserable. They
Oh
look
yeah.
like
And
overworked
they're
mine
charging a
workers.
lot of money. It is
Yes.
a very
Yes.
expensive product. So I would drive same experience. My office wasn't far, and I went through the same drive-through. And
Yep.
the lady who worked the drive-through's name was Mary. And I would
So
pull
good.
up to the order, and I would say, "Good morning," and she said, "Good morning, Eric."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Good morning, Mary. Would you like your regular?" "Yes." And then I'd pull around, and that was it, right? Like I didn't even order. She knew exactly who I was, what I did. I knew her by voice. She knew me by voice, whatever it was. So those are
So
the
good.
things, and those are true for every brand. A brand is
Yeah.
establishing that, and then when we talk about, because we're trying to tech, right? So like the HubSpot
Yeah.
experience, those types of things. If you don't have a platform in place that can bring up your brand promise, then you're done. You're done.
Okay, that's okay. I'm glad you said that because, and I got tired too. I used to rant about Starbucks on Twitter. I don't know why I thought anybody cared, but I was just like, "What are you guys doing?" But what they did is they used tech. I'm going to say they use tech to make money, and I want to be super clear that I'm in the business of helping businesses make money. Like if you're not
Right.
making money, you're not in business. So I have nothing against making money, but they
Agreed.
used the tech to squeeze every penny out of the human resource, and it made it a miserable place for their employees, and now by consequence a miserable place for the consumers unless you love pre-ordering, going through drive-through, and just picking up your sugary icy drink like right through the window. Maybe it's still your thing, but the alternative is people who are using tech to amplify that culture or experience, which I think Chick-fil-A is still doing that. They make that long
Oh
line
yeah.
go fast. That's tech. That's systems.
Well, and they make offers all the time through the app. You can get free this and free that, and they're yes, that's a great way to look at it. I talk about being a recovering technologist, and I was programming computers very young, loved the idea of it, but I don't like tech for the sake of tech. I like tech for
Yeah.
the sake of like, how does it make my life more convenient? How does it, empower and get stupid things out of the way? I just don't want to do the stupid
Yes.
thing, right? And so when a brand uses it as a way to replace what's a brand tenet, they're already on a very slippery slope. Yeah, like there's some. It's funny because like in Vegas, you can go in and you can check into a lot of hotels and you don't have to talk to anybody. Love that. I don't need to
Yeah.
talk to anybody on the front desk.
I
But
do love it.
when I go to certain hotels though that are higher end hotels, I kind of
Yeah.
want to go to the front desk because
That's
I'm
so good.
paying more money. I'm expecting a kind of
That's such a
service
you
level.
know you remember when people used to complain about self-checkout, and I'm not talking about Walmart. That's still
Yeah.
miserable. Walmart self-checkout is miserable, but
Oh
like
yeah.
there's a Circle K and you don't even have to scan it. You just put the stuff on the thing, it picks it up, it charges you, it gives you a pleasant ding sound. You just tap the card and it's another pleasant ding and you just walk out. I'm like, thank you. I
Yeah.
like that experience, but
Yeah.
yeah, when I have to talk to someone now at a cash register, I people still hate on that, but I'm like, I don't know. I just don't feel like talking to
Well, and
someone
it
that's miserable and fighting with me.
agreed. But it's a leveling thing, really. Like I talk about the
Yeah.
Vegas hotel where you don't really want to talk to anybody, you don't need a valet, you don't whatever, or you
Yeah,
go
well, like a
to a
Marriott property, I don't know, man.
yeah,
Just give me the key.
right. But you go to an expensive place and you
That's
have this
right.
like you're like, I want my car valeted. I want you to treat me like because I'm paying a
100%.
lot to be here and I want
100%.
someone to like do the
100%.
things. So what is the experience that's being expected based on how you've established the
That's right.
brand and made them aware and like all those
Yeah.
kind of things. So yeah.
There was a hotel in Tokyo. I'm pretty sure it was the Omni, which is a national brand, and apologies if I'm getting it wrong, Omni. But every time I would visit, I visited 8 times. Every time I would visit, they'd put me in a higher floor. They had me on a date. So there's like this hierarchy system, and it was almost like this gamification. I looked
Yeah.
forward to it.
Oh,
It's
yeah, yeah,
very
yeah.
polite, and they had a very what's the word, formal way of greeting you, and the service was so on par. And then it's like I was excited to know I was going to be in another higher floor, and just never failed the way that they handled it. That was a customer experience for me that you probably couldn't replicate in most properties. Like even what's the W brand? Not Wyndham. The Waldorf. Even
Waldorf
that one's
Astoria.
kind of like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, even that one's kind of slipping off. But again, when you look behind, we're off on a tangent here. But when you look behind the curtains, it's because the Waldorf is they're being consolidated by all these like large companies that are trying to introduce efficiencies, and then you lose something that made that W super elegant. I don't
Right.
consider that W a super
But you
classy
see,
brand anymore.
agreed. That is where because I talked earlier about how we love challenger brands. So a brand that's like third or fourth, that provides
Yeah.
an opportunity for a challenger brand if that challenger
Yes.
brand is brave
Yes.
enough to take this different stance, and if they build all the systems in a way that they can then support the brand promise they're making. So it's an opportunity. I love to see
I think you
those.
have to want something different. And I'm thinking about the challenger brands because what makes it special is some of the unscalable things. And maybe so some of these 5-star restaurants in New York might argue that you can systemize it. I know there's this cool documentary about one of those restaurants and you see the inner workings. I'm like, well, I don't know. It's still unscalable, right? He can't do
Right.
that in 52 cities nationwide. Um, I forgot where I was going with that. Something about scalable. Oh yeah, my point with the if you're not, so I've met companies that don't ever want to be number one by like revenue, but they do want to be number one in some certain experience. I've really favored those companies more. I feel like if you want to be number one, it introduces a level of competitiveness and like shareholder approval where you bring the whole system down into the ditch at some point. So I
Yeah.
don't know. So maybe the question there is like on the challenger brands, what is their goal? Do they want to be number one, or are you just saying you can 2x or 10x your revenue?
Yeah, I mean, and it is different from business to business. Revenue is an
Yeah,
easy marker, but I enjoy the ones that have different types of BHAGs. We want to
yeah, yeah,
serve,
yeah.
10,000 happy customers, or we want to, Waze, their BHAG was to save every driver 5 minutes a day. So
Yeah,
like
it's so
little
good. I miss
simple things
Waze.
like
I
that.
don't. I wonder if people are still using it.
I think there are. It depends on who you are. There's some Waze groupies.
No, that's a
I
great point.
was talking to a guy
It's like
just yesterday.
you don't need the map to get home, right? But you just want to
Yeah.
know: is there traffic on the
Yeah.
interstate? Should I go the back roads? Yeah, that's a
Right.
good one.
Yeah.
Um, I do want to pivot into tech because I've loved you've made the statement 2 or 3 times now. I'm a big fan of it. You're saying I don't like tech for tech's sake, which other people call like shiny objects. Um, what are you seeing today? Let's go real micro macro into today. What's distracting some of these owners that you'd really like to be helping, and then how would you pull some of them back on the tech side?
Yeah. So AI cannot replace the human touch, and so you should be looking at it
Yeah,
as AI enabling an expert. Now, I we can have another
that's good.
podcast about what that means for lower level people when they come in. But if you think that you're going to create efficiencies just because you can go vibe code a touch
Yeah,
point email, blah blah blah, it's like, well, why are you doing it? What's the right trigger? Is this the right
yeah,
application? And I talk about, if I take off in Atlanta and my plane is 1 degree off and I'm going to Seattle, I might
that's right.
land in San Francisco. And so any of
That's
these
right.
things that are 1 degree off, you still gotta you're not gonna save the money. Like, this is one of those things. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
we can just get it for everybody and start using AI. And the other problem with AI is, and it's a consumption model today. So as
Mm-hmm.
you consume more of it, at least for now, until we figure out how to make it more efficient, because I don't
Mm-hmm.
know that that'll stand. We've seen consumption models before, and cell phones
Mm-hmm.
used to be really expensive, text messages, those types of things. That's kind of where we are. And
Cell phones is a great point. That's a great example.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
like I've got 100 minutes or whatever.
that's
So
right. Yeah, I remember
we're
that.
seeing a little bit of that in the AI world. I was at a dinner last night and
Yeah,
we were discussing this idea of moving
credit
to that.
anxiety, token
Yeah,
anxiety.
right.
Yeah,
So I think there's a pendulum swung too far where CEOs and PE firms and owners think, oh, we can just start using AI for these things. And it's like,
yeah,
you can, but should you? Like, that's the
yeah,
question. And if you do, what are you doing to break your brand promise? What are you doing
yeah,
to, create some kind of where are you missing the boat in the fact that you're doing that? So
yeah.
my hope is I'm starting to see that turn, where there's a lot of conversation around AI slop and, trigger based events instead of just building somebody in the
Well,
same
you know what's
place. So,
funny is you and I are using it, so we see it, so we're ahead of the curve. I was in I have a church men's group on Wednesday mornings, and some of them are like sales professionals. And when I hear them talk about like just getting into it, I'm like, oh my goodness, you're so far behind. So it's like I do. So they are gonna learn. They are gonna learn this, but also there's still so few actual users that I don't think we've seen the full scope of this.
I
Now,
don't, but don't you
I did.
think that
Go ahead.
there's, I mean, from a, and I'm not exactly sure because there is some like overhangs just economy wise that we're not really facing. We don't have this key like dot bomb, 9/11, Great Recession thing that happened. But
Right.
there's this weird um, approach to it being this replacement of
Well,
the worker.
okay.
So,
So that's what I wanted to get into because I've been fond of saying lately vulnerably that you're already an agency, right? So you've solved a creative go to market. You're not relying on a company to pay you 300K a year, like board seats or
right.
stock options. Um, the people who really are at risk of the AI moving are the me's. They're like the mid 40s guys that are making 160 to 200K a year, and largely I would just sit around and supervise, and like you're paying me for the things I know in my head and experience and like how I can direct a couple of people. That's too expensive, and I've seen that already as I went back into the job market this last time. I had to think more creatively. I also had to start telling companies, yes, I could come down to 130, or yes, I can come down to 120. And again, I don't mind salary transparency because I was in the military so long. It doesn't really bother me. I don't want people to take any of these numbers personally. What my point is, there's a high paid segment of the workforce that's not doing much besides just knowing how much they know. And that's not worth as much money because AI can make me much faster. So and consultants will deal with this too. People are going to expect more for less money. So my point is, you mentioned the younger guys coming in. I actually think it's a ripe opportunity for the younger guys that are willing to learn, get the experience, and work with the tools, and not try to like. I'm even seeing guys in my category like sell against them. I'm like, dog, you're trying to sell
Yeah.
against electricity. It's going nowhere. Like you need to
So I
learn this
think,
quickly.
yeah, so that's interesting. So I'm going to give you kind of an entrepreneurial answer first. So it's
Yeah,
not a,
I want to hear it.
yeah, because my wife hates it when I say it, but I'm unemployable because I've never really, I had a
I'm
real job,
unemployable at this
I had a
point.
real
I've had to
job
come
for
to terms with that.
a period of time and never did again.
Yeah,
Um, so there's a book called Fourth
I'm writing it
Turning,
down. Hang on,
and
let me
it
write
came
it
out in the
down.
90s, and it talks about the phase we're in. So it talks about, there being
So good. I love that it came out in the 90s.
yeah, it's spring, summer, fall, winter kind of concept, and everything goes through a fourth
Okay.
turning. And so
Okay.
the
Fourth turning spelled out.
yeah, it's fourth turning. So
Okay.
it's
I got it.
FORUTH,
All right.
and predicts some of what's going on now. So if you think of return to village, so they talk about the concept of return to village. I would, back in the day,
Yes.
I would go to the cobbler and they would make my shoes because they knew me really well, or I would go to the
Is it Neil? Is
butcher.
it Neil Howe?
I believe so. Yes, it's
Okay, I
a
just want to read it for the audience. It's called The Fourth Turning, What the Cycles of History Tell Us About America's Next Rendezvous. There's also another one, same author, The Fourth Turning is Here, What the Seasons of History Tell Us About How and When This Crisis Will End. Good. And also, keep on this thread, but I want to say the same thing. I do think we're seeing a decentralization where everyone's going to have to be like the block in New York City. There's a leathersmith, a
yeah.
shoesmith, someone selling firewood. We're going there.
So I feel very good for you, Chad. Like I think you are in a good place. So I'm not worried about you.
I feel good, to be clear.
I'm a
Yeah, yeah.
little more worried about the younger generation because we need to create something like an apprentice model that allows us to make sure they know what's good and bad.
Okay,
Because
so tell me about that because I'm bringing in a guy. I signed a client, kind of low ticket for me here. They want front end work done, lead generation. I took that a younger guy from that church group. I said, I want you to show up today at 12:30. I'm going to show you what I'm doing. It's very easy. But like, I think he's going to learn it in 30 days.
I think
So,
he's going to
keep
learn
going.
how to do it, but I don't know if he's going to
Yes,
learn if it's right or not. That's the
that's fair.
problem. So,
That's
like, I
fair.
owned the research company for 10 years, and if I'd had AI in that 10-year period, I would have made a bazillion dollars because I had to, like, every
So good.
interview we did, it was an hour interview. I had to log it for an hour. We had to code it for an hour. We had to analyze it for an hour.
Mm,
I just did a qualitative research project for another client and I used AI to
mm.
analyze it. But AI was wrong on a few things because the patterns were
AI
off.
was wrong this morning for me also, yeah. But I
Right.
knew it. I think you're
We
going
had
here,
one
but
of
I
our
knew it because of the
agents
experience.
one of our agents in our Slack channel didn't know the date for Monday. Like our project manager, we had asked him to do something and then it said, I'll do it on this date. And the project manager was like, well, isn't Monday this date? And the AI is like, ha ha ha, yes, it is. It's like, how the hell do you not know
Yeah.
what the date of Monday is,
Such a
right?
great time for that clarity because it didn't look. I mean, we can unpack the tech of this, but it's trying to preserve tokens. It didn't look, and it gave you an
Whatever.
overconfident
I don't know.
answer.
It
It's so
makes
it's
the
so
it
silly.
makes the project manager go, I don't really know that I trust this, right?
It's ridiculous. I don't trust
So
anything else you say. Yeah, 100%.
yeah. So anyway, so if you think about back in the day, 3 years ago, somebody would send me a deliverable and I didn't like the deliverable, I would send it back to
Yeah.
them and I would be like, this is not right. It doesn't look the way I want
Mm.
it to. It's not worded correctly. It's not in blah, da, da. Today, if I get a deliverable from somebody and I don't like it, I've got all my systems set up and I just feed it into my system and fix it.
That's
So they
fair.
don't have any idea why I made the changes I did. So I'm not teaching them that way. And
Yeah.
so you go to fourth turning concept, right? So there's always been a long-term concept of businesses selling what we do on our behalf, right? So like if the skills that I have,
Okay.
that business is now selling me, right? Well,
Yes.
we're moving into a period where you know what your skill set is, you know what you do well,
Yeah.
and now you sell that to multiple businesses, just like the person who
Yes.
makes the shoes has multiple
Yes.
customers. And I had a guy that
Yes.
I worked with who was also kind of entrepreneurial like me, and he made a statement that always made me feel better. If you have a job and uh, your company fires you, you've lost your job. If you start a company,
Yes.
you start consulting and you have 10 clients and one client fires you, you have 9 clients. So,
That's right.
how do you think about what is it that you do really well? What are you uniquely positioned to look at, understand, interpret? And
Yeah.
that salary that you're talking about can be easily replaced through making sure you just have
Yes.
enough people who are leaning into you for that
No,
expertise.
2 clients, and I'm at 50% more than I ever made in W-2. I was
Yes,
like,
and
oh,
you go from capex to opex, which
that's
specifically in
right.
M and A's and
Is a
whatever
benefit to these guys.
they love
Yes.
that too. You're not
Yeah. Below the
cost of doing
line
goods.
expenses.
Yeah,
Let me push back because I want to keep unpacking this. You said I'm in a good spot. Now, you didn't see me 60 days ago. It was a painful mental shift. I
but
was in interviews. I was in
yes,
interviews like, you want to offer how much? You guys are out your mind. But then I had to look at the landscape and be honest with myself and say it changed. And also, I support entrepreneurs. This is very interesting. I've taken all these assessments every single time. I'm an ops guy, and I love being an ops guy. The entrepreneurs out there, I look at you guys and I'm like, wow, like you just see things a certain way. You create value from vision and, and hopefully you find a good integrator or a good ops guy to support you and you guys all make millions of dollars. So I'm still nervous for the mid to late career guys that are just getting angry and not accepting what's changing around them. Like the seasons are a good example because winter's coming no matter what. So buy a coat or chop wood or cry about it. So I just think the younger kids are more nimble. But tell
yeah,
me
they
your
are.
thoughts
But
on that. Like,
so they're more nimble to adopt the new model, but they may be
yeah,
creating slop, right? So like
they're definitely creating slop with
that's the
confidence.
problem, right?
That
With
blows my
confidence,
mind.
right? So then like that, yes,
Dude,
and
I got this.
well, yeah, and
Whoa.
there's been so many examples of there was one I saw where somebody introduced a fake medical condition into AI like a year ago, and so now AI is
Yeah,
telling people they have that medical condition, which they
that's right.
don't.
That's
So
right.
this idea of they may be a little bit more in tune to the technology, and I mean this is the same thing. They were setting up websites before anybody else when they weren't worried about it, social media, that kind of thing. The pairing, I will be I'm unique. I know that sounds really brave to say, but I can
Mm,
be a visionary or I can be an integrator. So my early career, I was working for a
yeah.
crazy visionary
No,
and I
it's
knew how
unique.
to integrate his
Yeah.
ops pieces. And in the role I have at the marketing firm, I am the visionary and I have an integrator.
Yeah.
So I do think being paired with someone is good. So like finding someone who
Yeah.
kind of balances you is a really good idea. So if you don't think you have the visionary, chops, which you might more than you expect.
Yeah, well, you might. I'm just not. Here's the way I'd put it. I appreciate you spending time on this. I was in a mastermind, whatever you want to call it, here in this conference room, and two of the visionaries on the other side, they had the typical icons. I recognize it right away. I forget what they are. But one of them was really honest. She's like, "Look, I'm good at two things. I can cast vision and I can land the plane." And I was like, "Oh, the only thing I hate worse than a loosey goosey entrepreneur is one that doesn't know that they're
Yeah.
being loosey goosey. You know, like if you
Right.
can admit that, there's a spot
Ooh.
for you and I to work together." Go ahead.
So back in the day, I wrote for Inc. magazine for a couple of years and interviewed about 1,000
Nice.
entrepreneurs on my
Yeah.
podcast about like what drives them. And people would ask me, what is the most dangerous thing in a leader or entrepreneur? Unaware. If you're
Yeah.
unaware
Yeah.
of where your skill
Yeah.
sets are, you believe you're good at all
Yeah.
the jobs, you don't understand like
Yeah.
where you fit. That is the most dangerous thing for an entrepreneur or leader to have is
Right.
an
So my
unawareness.
point on that is I also recognize that I have a different blend than most ops guys. I can find vision, but now almost 20 years in the military. So 12 active, 9 reserve now. Is that how math works? 8 to 9. Yeah, I'm coming on 9 reserve. So it's good. I know it's confusing, but I promise you it's right. I'll be retirement eligible next year. I can find vision. I have found that I am energized when I just hear someone with clear vision, and my first thought is like, "Put me in, coach. Let's go
Yeah.
crush it." I hate it when I have to sit around and try to think about, what's the market pain. I'm inclined to just fix things too fast. Like, oh, that was easy. So I hear what you're saying, and I could say I've officially at this point been forced to go out on my own on the RevOps side. But that's unique because I am selling sort of what I am. Like I'm not
Yeah.
trying to invent a
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
water-filled
You know your
travel weight
brand.
set.
You know your
Yeah,
brand.
yeah,
Yeah, you know your
yeah.
brand. So that's a
Okay.
important aspect of it. The betting on yourself, there's never a better thing to do than to bet on yourself. So bet on
Well, that's
yourself.
what I'm getting at then, even with the AIs. I'm not saying don't go get a job, and I'm not saying all jobs go away. I am saying that the data shows us very readily over the last 6 months, there is consolidation in the
Yeah.
marketplace. I don't buy the excuses. I don't, when do you know Cloudflare, the
Yeah.
company?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, when they lay off 20% of their workforce and they cite it as, oh, because we want to be AI forward, that's garbage. That's not.
Yes.
And again, I don't object to layoffs. Like companies have to lay off. That's what happens. But don't like slap me in the face and say it's because AI is going to do your job. That's false. Like
Right.
maybe you made mistakes in 2018 or 2019. You're finally reconciling this. You need to lay off. You need to preserve overhead. Maybe what nobody's talking about, which I think more people should, the remote workforce is a gigantic thing. So there's a lot of cheaper people worldwide. And I had tremendous talent in Colombia, Mexico. So that's another reason to fire 20% of your workforce too. But I guess my point in saying that is we're going to have not chaos, but there's going to be a lot of pain in the consolidation. And I think anyone in the marketplace, if they think that your next best bet is another job, it's going to be a lot less than you're expecting, and it's going to demand different skill sets that a lot of people don't want to
Yes.
take the time to embrace.
Yeah. I guess the one blind spot I have is I'm not uncomfortable about change, and
Yeah,
98% of people are, and it just doesn't. I don't. I'm like, okay, this is what we're doing
it's
now.
very
Like we're
weird.
doing this direction, and so that's where I get a
Yeah,
blind spot because I'm like, yeah, things changed, of course, like they're going to change, like that's how the world works. So that
yeah,
I don't have as much empathy as I should for others who are
yeah.
going through the change. And like, but it changed. I'm like, it changed. What did you expect, right? So anyway,
Well, roll with yeah. It's been fascinating for me and uncomfortable, and also like on the other end of the breakthrough. When I got my first invoice paid, I sent it. It was $1,000 too. Let's be clear. I was making my highest W-2 year was $299. I got $1,000 invoice, and I texted my
you
wife. I'm like, this
celebrated.
changes everything, babe. This changes it. Okay. Is there more thoughts that you have on AI or systems for systems use? And then I want to pivot us into selfish questions about branding. I want to take you, since your
Yeah.
time is here, and ask you about branding.
So the system is not a strategy and strategy is not a system. So you have to think about
Yeah.
those in a very separate replace. They need to be complementary to each other, and they typically require different minds to think about them.
Yes.
And so we see companies that do a lot in strategy, but then they don't have the systems to support it, or they immediately open
Yeah.
up the system. They open up HubSpot and start trying to do things, but they don't know what the strategy is. And so you've
That is
got to make
unfortunate in
sure you
my
vary those.
sorry to cut you off, but I want the RevOps guys to hear this. There in my field, there's this movement of labeling they call it the GTM engineer, the go-to-market engineer.
Yeah.
They're replacing RevOps with that. It's very unfortunate. You don't want a nerd that just loves stacking routers and systems, like thinking about how you make money. It's two different
Yeah.
things.
And then we'll make bad decisions based on kind of quantitative numbers that may or they're not leading indicators. They're typically
That's right.
lagging. And so your
Yeah.
strategy is where you're going to see some of the things that then end up resulting later. So that qualitative approach, understanding it from a strategy perspective, is very important. Systems are important too. So if I build a strategy and I can't execute it, then it doesn't matter. And that's why Liger, we take over the strategy and we take over the systems for marketing, the marketing
Yeah.
ecosystem, because the IT teams, which is where you think it would lie, they don't want it. They don't understand it. They're used to building kind of production level things. And when marketing
Yeah,
keeps
they want
coming
a
to them and
backlog. They want sprints. They want priorities. No,
they get
I agree
annoyed
with you.
by the marketing people. They're like, why do you keep needing something
That's
else?
right.
It's like, because things keep changing and we have to keep moving forward. So yeah.
That's right. Also, AI won't replace those guys too. I know that's kind of a
Yeah.
slightly different topic, but you still need people to steer
Oh yeah.
things.
Yeah.
All right, branding questions.
Okay.
First off, Liger's seared into my mind now, and it's like I want the mug that's on your
Well,
like
if you
it
become
worked.
a
I guess is my point.
client, we do
That's
send
great.
mugs to everybody, and then
That's
we
great.
send everybody a mug, and it has their name on it because we have our
Oh, that
mugs with
see,
our
look at that! You get lasting
yeah
customer experience.
yeah.
Okay,
So
then I'll. This is unsolicited, or this is solicited free advice. I love the name, and so I have two questions. One is about a name, and then one is about colors and brand feel. And I want to
okay,
reference the new picture back here is the default Zoom picture that comes from this thing. My little casting that I tried to do for the podcast went off. I didn't want to fix it. I've always loved this photo because it's got depth, it's iconic, it's memorable, you know. But then it's like, if you really look at it, you're like, oh, does he have the Zoom background on there? I don't know. It just looks good. Now,
yeah.
I like the color pattern, and I've realized that I'm kind of come to be known for this blue here, and I want to lean into that blue. So I guess I would have two questions on a guy that wants to sell himself as fractional RevOps. Someone came into my inbox yesterday, a CRO, and said, "Hey, are you offering fractional RevOps?" And my first thought was, I hate that name. And yes, you want to give me money? Let's go work
Right.
together. So like, what's a name for RevOps? And then what would you tell someone that's trying to think about colors, brandings, or logo?
So and I'm stealing this from one of my internal people, so it's not my idea, but you
Mm,
do have to worry about getting people over the mountain. And so meaning over the
mm,
mountain, if RevOps is what they're looking for, that's what you have to call yourself, even though you have some fun other way of talking about it.
fair.
And then when they've looked for that, you can then talk about your process, the way you do things, whatever. So if people are looking for fractional RevOps, you should own fractional RevOps, and then you
I
can
think
come
you're
up with
right.
your own system for it on the back end, or name that you're using, or things like that. So you do have to, and
Okay, but
buyer.
tie that to Liger then. How do you guys reconcile that? So you're Liger, but you do a sophisticated, holistic marketing approach for companies 10
Yeah,
million
the
and
buyer
over.
semantic, when we're looking at ways of bringing people through from an awareness and traffic perspective, we're talking about pain points, and we're doing them in the buyer
Okay.
semantic. And so then you learn
Okay.
that Liger is a solution to that. So Liger was never intended to
Okay.
be like I could look at Liger and know what it
I love
does,
that.
right?
And
So,
buyer semantic is another way of saying use the words that your customers are using about their
and
pain, right?
nowadays you absolutely have to. Like, we now can search the way we want to search. So whatever people are searching for is how you want to make sure you're showing up, and that you have a unique story within that search result, right? So and you just got to own what they're looking for. Like, you got to own what they're looking
Mm,
for, and then you can really
mm,
do what you want to with the name. You know, naming. There's some tricks around it. Like, a two-syllable name is typically the most
yeah.
successful. So Liger, Nike, things like that. You
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of so two
I'm
syllables
taking
is
notes.
good. Two syllables is
Two
good,
syllables.
and simple with the brand. So we do like the idea of a logo mark, which is
Simple.
kind of interesting because you're seeing a lot of companies try to just go to word mark, but then how do you use the logo mark in other
Well,
places?
that's funny
And
you say that because even as I'm paying attention to the most memorable emerging new tech in Silicon Valley, so words like clay, gong, intercom,
yeah,
one, they're simple words, but they have a logo for all of them that I remember. And
yeah, 100%.
I went through a naming exercise the other day, and then I hated what I came up with. I'm like, all right, we'll go revisit that. But like it's sticking out, and it's words that you wouldn't normally. It's another thing that's interesting too is both gong and intercom fascinate me because they're words that you wouldn't think that are associated with what they do, but then they kind of are.
Yeah,
It's like what a gong does is also what your service does as you're recording these sales calls and giving sentiment, and then what intercom does is very similar to what an
yeah.
intercom does. So I just think it's brilliant, but then you have so many stories of like brilliant that failed too. Like what was the Apple Cube thing that just bombed, and he spent like
Oh yeah.
350 million on that name?
Yeah, but there could be that could just be product market fit, right? As it relates to because you got
Okay,
like you could have a great brand and no product market fit. I mean, that's
that's a great
a
point.
problem. So yeah, I mean, you forgive yourself on the finding you. You just need to lean into what people are looking for, and then you need a name that's memorable. That and if it has some kind of association to what you do, where you are, what you believe, like those kind of things,
Yeah.
then that's
Well,
that's a
yours has a
bonus.
story,
Yeah,
and I'll never forget yours because of the story.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
We were merging
that
two
in fact,
businesses and needed something strong and memorable.
yeah,
And we also,
but I will. I'll probably never forget this episode because of that story. So,
yeah,
so for whatever it's worth, anecdotally, that is the power of non-convoluted, simple, good directional story. You know, it's like,
yeah. I mean,
oh, I
story.
get
We
it.
love story. The human body or the human brain is built for story. So if you can tell me a
Yeah.
story, I don't know if you've ever. What's the? I can't. Now I'm gonna completely water. What's the water one? Like charity water. Charity water. Oh my
Uh huh.
gosh, that man's story. I've seen him present a couple times, and you will
Never heard of it.
never forget the charity water story. If you go Google
Fascinating.
on Google that the why he
Okay,
created
charity
charity
water.
water. Yes,
Okay, so name, good tips. Now color.
color. You so I know you said you want blue.
Yeah.
Everybody wants blue.
You can
So
tear it down. That's fine.
typically take companies and put them on a color wheel, and the color wheel
Uh
tells
huh.
you what because each color has like an indication of what it means.
Okay.
So like
Take a note.
as
Look up color wheel.
yeah, so the color wheel, and I'll send you the color wheel. So there's a color wheel, and you have the red, orange, yellow. What those, and so that helps too. Like, what does your brand want to be? And then you
Yeah.
also should look at people who are competitive and see where they sit, and try to choose
Yes.
something that is not in that
Yeah.
category.
Did
So
you ever
we
read the 22 Immutable Laws of Branding? Old
no,
book.
I did not.
That was my
Yes,
that he just pointed out, like Coca-Cola red, Pepsi purple.
right.
You just go on and like his point was that don't pick a color that someone else already owns.
Well, and we
Go
do a lot
own a
with
color.
like fintech and financial services and insurance, and they all want to pick blue or green. They're all like
Interesting.
clustered on the blue and green side, and we're like,
Yeah.
but
So now, but
notice
then is it
ING, I
mutual?
think it's ING does orange, right? Theirs is orange.
Yeah, and
So
then Washington Mutual yellow. So, but they stand out.
yeah,
Interesting. What color do you guys? You guys have a color on the logo mark, don't you? On the on the text.
yeah, we lean into orange, so we're very very bright
Okay.
orange. If I were using my typical background, we have our office is called the Liger layer, and we have a big huge
Mm,
orange couch in the front
cool.
lobby, and
I
those we
love it.
have also a bright lighted Liger head when you walk in, so
Yeah.
you definitely know where you
That
are.
$24 million consulting firm, they just rebranded, and I like some of it, but they had an iconic green that everyone just associated with them with, and they went to a black and white logo. And when I saw it change on my LinkedIn, I was just kind of sad. I was like, I don't. And she's a very smart CEO, so I'm sure there was some
Visceral
data behind it. But
visceral reaction. So I want a visceral reaction, and maybe you can get away with
okay,
it when you're more mature. But when you're young, when you're trying to stand out, you can't do too much. Like we'll see companies try to like do too much. Two colors, something simple. Use a logo mark because it allows you to then be recognized by the logo mark, and it's easier
that's
to
right.
implement into presentations and business cards and things like that. And keep it simple. Keep it simple.
I love it. Is there anything we didn't talk about that you want to talk about?
I think we had a good conversation. I think that it's interesting because you come from the RevOps side and I'm a recovering technologist. So there are components of marketing and go to market that
For
are
sure.
hard, like numbers and things, but then there's also the soft. And
Yeah.
it's very rare that somebody thinks about them in both mindsets. So making sure your room has those things. Please do not sit down
Yeah.
to AI and build your marketing strategy. Get in a room with somebody with a whiteboard and
I was
then
on a call with someone yesterday. She was helping me with positioning. I actually think she's very talented. Her podcast actually released today, LinkedIn positioning. I don't know how you feel about that, but you could go check it out. But she was like, "Yeah, and just sit down with Claude." And I was like,
yeah, I would
"Yes,
say
I'm down
for
with that, but like,
I would say for a tactic like a LinkedIn tactic, as long as you have the foundational documents, that you can think about it that way. But when you're trying to build
yeah."
like
But
the
she's forgetting
foundational,
that she had 7 years of brand marketing experience in the radio world, and so
yeah,
again, that's a compliment to her. But
right,
you need to understand that what I see in Claude and what you see in Claude, like we filter and accept answers
it's yeah,
differently. So I just
it's an
don't love that as like
unequitable
the
starting
advice.
point. Yeah, unequitable
Yeah,
starting
for
point.
sure,
Yeah, and
for sure.
marketing is about reading the room. So you've got to get people in a room to read the room. So how are people responding? Are they agreeing? I
Okay,
love
that's so funny
facilitating a room.
because yesterday when that CRO came in my DM unsolicited, we were talking about something else. She said, "Do you offer fractional RevOps?" I was like, "Damn it, that's my there's the marketing language." Like,
Yeah.
and so today on my to do list is actually to change my banner to make sure it's clear that you can pay me for RevOps.
Yes.
All right, well, what else?
I mean, you know where to find me. Like,
Yeah,
love
no. So
having conversations.
tell the
Yeah, we're
audience where to find you, who you want to help, what they can do to take a next step. We're also going to put all those links in the description, but let's do that.
yeah, so we are ligermarketing.com. So you can go to that website. You can find me on LinkedIn. That's where I live and interact with everybody, and that's where I put almost
Good.
all of my content nowadays. And of course, we have
Good.
stuff on our blogs and things. And I also have a podcast called The Claw, and I bring on
Very cool.
people talking about marketing and brand and things like that. But and love to talk to entrepreneurs. They're my heart. I do some operational work for entrepreneurs as a kind of side to the business, but it's a lonely road, but it's also it's a lot of
For
fun
sure.
when you get it running right. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Eric. For everyone else, if you made it this far with us, if you like this episode, I want you to hit like and subscribe. I will see you in the next one. Hang out 1 second with me, Eric. Stop. All right.